What's cracking, y'all? You are now watching Boo TV. Appreciate you for stopping in. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, stay notified, and let's get into the topic for today. Rest in peace to Bill Walton, who passed away after a long, hard fight with cancer at 71 years old, May 28th. I just want to send my condolences out to his friends and family members and to everyone in the world that knew Bill personally, and even those people that didn't know him personally but felt connected to him and looked up to him and was a fan of his. I definitely know that all of you are heartbroken as well. So to everybody connected to Bill in some type of way, my condolences, and especially to his friends and family members, my prayers are with you and your family. I know it took me a little bit to get this video out. One reason was because when I first heard the news, it's one of those situations, I wake up and I look at it, I'm like, wait, this can't be right. And I was like, Bill Walton passed away? It's like I was caught in a nightmare. It's like I just couldn't believe it. And I put out a post on a YouTube channel, just putting out my immediate feelings and my thoughts, nothing long. And over the span of a couple days, many people chimed in with comments to put their thoughts and expressions out as well. So I wanted to let those accumulate, so when I do a video, I can get everybody's responses in and share them with everyone on this video for the Bill Walton life tribute, if you will. And I'm happy I did that. I waited for all the comments to accumulate, because during that time, obviously with the passing of Bill, his name is trending and people are talking about him. So lovely subscriber and supporter here, Dutch T, dropped a couple links for us to watch some videos regarding Bill Walton. And also a YouTube channel that we've reacted to before about Bill Walton content in the past reached out to me on one of their videos. CLNS Nick, go check the YouTube channel out. They passed me one of their videos that they just put out about Bill Walton's passing, so we'll take a look at that tribute video as well as the ones Dutch T dropped from us from ESPN and Bill Simmons and other sources as well. Before we get into the video, I'm not going to sit here and make a long story about Bill Walton and his career. I have a Bill Walton playlist, so you can go check out that playlist to see the other content we've done about Bill in the past. Just a couple quick things I want to say about him. Definitely one of the most underrated players of all time. Underrated bigs of all time at that. And Bill Walton is also probably the biggest what if in NBA history. Through all the players that have played in this league where injuries had completely derailed them, I could say none more than Bill Walton. None more. Especially because we already saw what he was able to do. Bill Walton won an NBA championship in 1977 while also winning Finals MVP. And then the year after, he won regular season MVP in 1978. The dude was on top of the basketball world at the time. He would sign as a free agent with the Los Angeles Clippers. Well, at the time, the San Diego Clippers would eventually become the Los Angeles Clippers. And one of the reasons he left was because he felt the treatment of injured players, not with just him, but other players on the roster as well, he deemed unethical and not right. And they didn't trade him, so he sat out an entire season basically protesting before he could eventually move on. And then after things didn't go so hot in San Diego, mostly because partially because he was always hurt. He eventually made his way to the Boston Celtics, where he was part of one of the greatest franchises of all time. Won a championship with that 1986 Boston Celtics squad. But after that, he would again be riddled by injuries. And one of the reasons I say he's probably the biggest what if is because this is the one guy where we actually got to see him win at the highest level. So there wasn't if he would have stayed healthy, he could have been this. He could have. No, we saw what Bill Walton could do. We saw what Bill Walton did as a top player in the NBA. So it was only a matter of how much more winning at the highest level was he going to be able to do, because he already showed us he could do it. And his career was never the same after that. But even as a role player with the Boston Celtics, he was phenomenal. And everybody would tell you that on the team. Hell of a guy. Not just a basketball player, but a hell of a person. A guy that filled everybody's hearts with joy, with passion. Filled their stomachs with laughter. He did for me. If you go look at any of my Bill Walton content, I can assure you I'm smiling the whole entire video. The guy is just, he has charisma, he has charm, he has a certain aura around him. Like I could spend a whole vacation with Bill and it would be the best time of my life. And even outside of his player profile, for me, because I didn't watch Bill growing up. I wasn't around. I wasn't born until 1987. So everything I learned about Bill was from research. All right? For me, it was him as a commentator, as a broadcaster. Throw it down, big man. Throw it down. I remember when I first saw Kevin Garnett. Or not going to say first saw KG. When I first saw KG in an All-Star game. I believe it was Bill Walton who was making comparisons to KG and Bob McAdoo. If I'm not mistaken. He was on CBS. He was on ABC. He was on NBC. He was on ESPN, if I didn't say that already. He did NCAA basketball. Like, he is a legendary broadcaster. And as amazing and as much of a legend he was as a basketball player, especially during his time being healthy, you could make an argument that he was even more amazing of a broadcaster. And I think one of those reasons why is because his personality just brought broadcasting to a whole nother level. Where if you saw Bill Walton was talking today during the game, you was about to sit down just to hear what Bill Walton had to say. He was special. And that's not taking a jab at his NBA career. That's how amazing his broadcasting career was as a broadcaster. And that's a field where he can let his unique personality drip into his actual job in his career. You don't always get to see that from players when you just watch them run up and down the court. That's all I got to say about that. I won't hold you guys too long. We got a lot of videos to get into. Rest in peace, Bill Walton. And my prayers are with his family and friends. Thank you for stepping in, folks. Let's get into this content.
We start our show with some very sad news. Bill Walton, the two-time NBA champion and Naismith Basketball Hall of Famer, died today at the age of 71 following a prolonged battle with cancer. He was surrounded by his family, and NBA Commissioner Adam Silver released a statement reading in part, "Bill Walton was truly one of a kind. As a Hall of Fame player, he redefined the center position. Bill then translated his infectious enthusiasm and love for the game to broadcasting, where he delivered insightful and colorful commentary which entertained generations of basketball fans. But what I will remember most," Silver said, "about him was his zest for life." What a beautiful way to put it. He was a regular presence at league events, always upbeat, smiling ear to ear, and looking to share his wisdom and warmth. We will be remembering, honoring Bill for the next hour and a half here on NBA Today with Adrian Wojnarowski, the Hall of Famer, Michael Wilbon, Kendrick Perkins. I'm Malika Andrews. It's rare to be talking about a Hall of Fame player and a legendary broadcaster. And I don't know where to start with Bill Walton. Michael Wilbon, because his greatness encapsulated so much.
You just did. You started the only place. Greatness across multiple platforms, across decades. I don't know where to start. And, you know, Bill was only 5 years older than I am now, but it felt like I was watching him as a tiny little kid. I wasn't, but his personality was so large and his impact on basketball and the industry and sports and then broadcasting so great. And so I watched all those games, the 88 games in a row, and the 3 times he was Player of the Year and multiple championships, and hugging Coach John Wooden when I seemed like I was a little kid. And then I got to share a set like this with Bill on Countdown with great Bill Walton. And I just, he would come in with reams. Before research was what it was, Bill would have his own research. And he would come in with like, trees had died, so Bill could have all the copy, oh my goodness, that he would have. But there was still pain. He had to lay on the floor at times during commercial breaks because he was in such pain. His back from his foot issues. I've had a number of foot surgeries recently, and I asked Bill about that. But I'll just tell you quickly, I am fortunate enough to be inducted into the Hall of Fame 3 years ago, the Basketball Hall of Fame. And while I was doing a rehearsal, you have a rehearsal of your speech that morning, and I'm in there with Tim Duncan. I'm terrified, terrifying. Mm-hmm. And Bill ducks his head into the room, and in that voice just says, take as much time as you want. You don't need, there's no bell, there's no Kornheiser, this isn't PTI. Make them drag you off the stage. And at that point, he relaxes you. Like Tim Duncan and I were both terrified, except that Bill put us at ease. And so, man, he and Dave Pasch, I feel for Dave Pasch, particularly, yes, Bill's family, Dave Pasch, Steve Snapper Jones, rest his soul. To listen to the two of them, I got a satellite dish in part for Bill Walton, because you could hear Clippers games even 30 years ago when nobody was watching the Clippers. You wanted to hear Bill Walton. Yeah. At least I did.
There's only 2 legendary players I've ever remembered bringing my son to dinner with, Charles Barkley and Bill Walton. And you think of those two, they're the only comparisons, I think, really for each other. Transcendent players, transcendent broadcasters in very different ways. And there's really only one Charles, but Bill Walton, you just described it. Go back to the Clippers, to NBA coverage, to, you know, later in his career, the Pac-12 late at night. But I wanted him to hear the stories and be around those two. And the funny thing with Bill Walton is, you've heard all the stories about Red Auerbach blowing the smoke when he's in there with the doctor trying to get his foot approved to play for the Celtics. Yep. Any number. You have no idea how many of them are actually true. But you wanted them to be true, and it didn't matter. No one could tell stories like him, but what he was as a player was revolutionary. And as good as anybody who played the center position, you know, you look at Nikola Jokic now, his roots are in Bill Walton, how he played that position, the passing, an MVP, a finals MVP, 3-time National Player of the Year. You think of maybe the greatest college performance ever, 44 points in a national championship game in 1973 on 21 of 22 shooting. The foot injuries obviously derailed his career, but pound for pound, skill-wise, the idea that John Wooden had Lou Alcindor, obviously Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for 3 years, and then another 3 years of Bill Walton after. He comes from an era that we'll never see again, and his impact, not just as a player, but as a broadcaster, one of a kind.
Bill Walton was therapy, right? He was therapy in his own way, meaning if you were having a bad day, a sad day, he was the person that you wanted to be around.
Absolutely.
Because it was nothing negative about him, right? He would brighten up your day. And I remember when I was drafted to the Boston Celtics, I remember sitting down with him, and he asked me, do you know what it means to be a Celtic? And I was like, no, I'm from Beaumont, Texas. I don't have a clue. And he sat down, he talked to me literally for about an hour and a half on the history of the Boston Celtics and what it meant and how you should approach it every single day with the pride. And what I got from it is he was real. It was real. It was authentic. It wasn't nothing fake about him. It was, everything was authentic, and you just love it because you could be around somebody, right, And when they have that type of energy, it's contagious. Right? You saying, man, what you doing for the rest of your day? Because I want to come kick it with you. Where you going? What you doing on your free time? I want to come hang with you.
And this Perk, right, is somebody who experienced tremendous pain, tremendous suffering, a speech impediment as a young person that when he was a player, you wouldn't have imagined that he could become the kind of broadcaster he did. He overcame a lot in his life.
And we were supposed to be talking about the Boston Celtics, but it turned out to be talking about, like, life. And we just listen. I just listen. Like, just Bill Walton talking about, you know, what you should be doing and how you should be taking care of yourself and what you should be thinking about. And you know how he would dive into things.
We were fortunate, too, Perk, to have that person at that point. That was a second life.
Right.
And Woj mentioned it. Look, Bill was unbelievably shy and introverted, the stuttering being a large part of that. And so it was unthinkable that person, who people thought was too sheltered by John Wooden, that he would never flower, that he flowered in the way he did and became a complete extrovert. And the person, as Perk says, that you wanted to be around, that you wanted to share experiences with, get advice from, talk about the history of the game. Because there's another thing. And Bill Walton did this to the degree that at a time where Bill Walton comes along and becomes a young man during the back end of the civil rights movement and struggle. And he had shared a locker room at the beginning of his career, at the end of theirs, with people like Bill Russell and certainly Kareem, and shared the stage of life in Southern California, people like Jim Brown. And Bill went out on a limb. Bill was one of the, I'm going to say, few white athletic stars of his time that then took to the front lines of this struggle and did not mind talking about it, did not mind getting in somebody's face about it. And you're like, wow, that's the same guy who was so inward and didn't seem like he would ever be this person. And so you got it publicly, you got it privately, and to underscore your word, he was real. It was authentic. And Bill felt these things. And then once he was out there as this character, you know, but he wasn't a character, he was real, he wanted to bring everybody along with him. And that is the part that, you know, I think makes those of us who got to know him so sad today.
He was the one that would, like, tell you, hey, listen, if I passed away tomorrow, you better not cry at my funeral, otherwise I had a security escort you out.
But
like, that's how, seriously.
You hear him saying it.
Yeah.
As much as he talked, as much as that was part of what made him larger than life, every room he walked into and conversation that he entered, he cared more about how you were doing than listening to himself, Lobon.
I think that was true from the pain that Woj mentioned that he had suffered again. I remember the first day I worked with Bill, we're in Bristol. And I think it's a Sunday, maybe a Friday night, but a Friday or Sunday doubleheader. And we got hours in the studio, and Bill had to get out of the chair and find a place that he could relieve some of the physical pain he was enduring. And I don't remember anymore whether that was feet or back. It really didn't matter. It was what he did. And yet, when the light went on, you know, and he'd come back and he would talk about the people in the room, and he didn't want anybody to talk about his pain. You knew he was in it, but he didn't revel in it. And that's a tough place. You look, I had my son, you know, he looks at the numbers, and people look at numbers now, they want to judge careers and assess. And like, no, you can't look at the numbers. You can go look at video. You can go see how Bill Walton played.
Yeah.
You see one of those clips we just had where he shoots a left-hand hook? You think he didn't study Kareem, left and right hand, and he has a left-hand hook shot off the baseline. And he, by the way, he's great athlete. I mean, running, jumping. Look, there's a left-hand hook off glass. How many people have that now? Listen, there's a really talented world, and you have your Jokic's out there, and you have your Embiid's. But I'm going to tell you something. I don't know that anybody out there had the complete package this size that Bill Walton had. So he was in all that pain, and it reduced his career, but in the room, on the road, sitting in a room pregame, he talked about you. He wanted to know about you and your family and how your kids were and what your life was like. And he was an amazing dude.
That chapter of his career in Boston, that 85-86 Celtic team, when he had just enough health left in him to play a six-man role on maybe as good of a team, certainly one of the best 2, 3, 4 teams in NBA history, you know, with Bird, McHale, Parrish, and their prime, and what it meant for Bill Walton to be a part of that team how seamlessly he fit into it. You know, that was certainly one of the great passing teams of all time. And, you know, he never really played a complete season after that. But I think being a part of that Celtic dynasty was so important to him. And the way Larry Bird talks about him, Kevin McHale, they knew they were playing with one of the all-time greats, you know, although that he was somewhat diminished at that point.
He was a giant among giants. We are certainly thinking of his wife, his children, his family today as we continue to remember Bill over the next hour and a half here on NBA Today. And we're going to head to break now, but I encourage all of you, social media can be such a terrible place. But if you take a look at it today, if you take a look at it right now, just scroll through a couple of stories of outpourings of love, of people remembering Bill and the impact that he left on the world. It's really special to see that kind of legacy being left. NBA Today, we'll be right back.
Now we get to the news that stopped us all in our tracks yesterday, and that is that the Hall of Famer Bill Walton has died at the age of 71 after a prolonged battle with cancer. Where do you begin about his career? First off, as a player, dominant center at UCLA, won 2 national championships, Player of the Year 3 times, universally considered perhaps the first or second greatest college player that ever lived. That went on to the NBA, won a championship in Portland in 1977, then a variety of injuries, but came back as a 6th man and won another title with Boston in 1986. As impressive as he was on the court, though, there are generations who don't remember that and only knew him for his infectious personality. He was a national treasure as a broadcaster. Many of the years he did that were for us right here on ESPN. Simply put, there was nobody like Bill Walton.
I think a lot of people figure that I win all the games, you know, but really it was more the other guys than me. I played the best of my ability all the time. When people ask me questions, I tell them honest answers.
First championship at UCLA, that was big, wasn't it?
That was big, but the second one was nicer.
I've never coached a better player, I've never coached a better competitor, and I've never coached a better person than Bill Walton.
Big Red, baby. Big Red.
Bill. I really don't have nothing to say.
Thank you, Boston. You're wonderful. Now let's go win a basketball game right now.
With enthusiasm and emotion, I could let my personality out and be very free on the basketball court.
Sometimes the light's all shining on me.
Gotta have the right equipment. Failing to prepare is preparing to fail.
Take a bite out of it while it's lit.
While it's lit?
Say, I'm kidding. Let me get out of your shot here, guys.
Great to see you, Snoop.
Well, Snoop and I go way back. Snoop and I, we go way back.
Ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready.
This is called the Glockenspiel, okay?
It's got Jay Garcia on it. Please don't.
Yeah, that's a Jerry. National Popcorn Day, please. Party on.
Chance
The physical
opportunity.
nature of the Wildcats coming right in there. Claws flailing. Steve Miller, soar like an eagle. Yeah.
Steve Miller, he's a Texan, right? Willie Nelson. I was out this morning talking to Stevie Ray and to Willie.
Yeah.
And I found something here. We were on the grass, and this was lying there, this piece of wood with some tillandsias growing on it. And this is how you use this dirt.
No,
See,
don't.
You do it like this, you get it, you sort of rub it on, and then you just sort of, okay, now I'm ready to go.
I wish it could have lasted longer. Unfortunately, it didn't. But all good things and all good times, and we'll get there soon.
You know, Bill was, when he was a child, he had a bad stutter, and he overcame that. And his exuberance for life, his exuberance for speech, his exuberance in everything that he did, both on and off the court, were among the hallmarks of his life. I came to know him so well over the years. He was probably on Mike and Mike 200 times. I want to say it was pretty much every week. I'll tell some stories here in a moment, but I thought I would let each of the guys here. I mean, you told me that you had a chance to meet with him at one time when you were young in your career.
Yeah, it's just passing through and being an undrafted guy who nobody knew my name, but, you know, my mother always told me you treat the janitor the same way you treat the CEO, and Bill Walton stepped up to me and said, I love the way you approach the game. I love the way you work hard, and you're going to have a long career in this league. He didn't know me from, Adam's house cat, but he gave me that advice, and that always stuck with me. And I try to live my life the same way he lives his life. He was such a kind man. He always said please. He always said thank you. He always said hello to people around the arena and in the game. So that's something I will always take with me, and I'm thankful for that.
You know what I loved about Bill is that every time I saw him, regardless of what was going on in the sport of basketball, college basketball, NBA, first question he would always ask me is, Jay, how's Nikki doing? How are your kids doing? It was always about your wife and your family first. And also, he told me something one time, because I think in the world that we live in sometimes, we diminish a lot of the accolades that we end up having. And he would talk, he's like, Jay, don't ever let somebody diminish you being two-time National Player of the Year. Like, what we've been able to accomplish, like being an NBA champion, getting a chance to do all these great things, like we are part of the elite, and sometimes it's okay to remind people of some of the nuances that helped us get there, because nuance is everything. Context is everything. We miss that sometimes in sports. And the one thing you always got with Bill, you got the nuances of life. He was always bigger than the moment. I'm sincerely going to miss him.
Yeah, what you're talking about, Jay, is the first experience I had with Bill Walton was many, many years ago as a part-time sports writer, just getting started in the business. He happened to be doing a clinic on Long Island. He had spent the whole day, a couple of hours, lecturing, coaching, all that stuff. I hung around hoping I could get a story. And I went up to him nervously because I figured he's probably tired. The last thing he wants to do is, sit down now and have an interview. And he graciously gave me the time, and then we talked for an hour. And he sat there just talking basketball with a big smile on his face. But what really struck me was that he was more as interested in what I thought about basketball as what I was trying to get out of him. He kept asking me my opinion, and then we would discuss it. And I love that about him. And over the years, at different times, I've had a chance to see him. He's come on my radio show a few times. The joy that he speaks with basketball is something that is so genuine. But also, when he talks, there's a lot of funny things he said, but a lot of poignant things. And probably his mentor, John Wooden, when he says this, it stuck with me, is the happiness begins when selfishness ends. Like, that to me is something that I'll never forget. He has repeated that many times. And it tells you everything you need to know about the man.
Yeah, let me break on that thought here, because I don't have enough time to share the stories that I want to share and to do justice the greatness of this man beyond his basketball career. The world knew him as a great basketball player. The world knew him as a great broadcaster. But to know him as a person was an entirely different experience. So let me pause briefly on that thought. We'll come back and we'll set aside some time for those stories a little bit later. Bill, we loved you. Thank you for everything you did for the game. Thank you for everything you did for us at ESPN and beyond. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. This is Get Up on ESPN.
We're grateful for the time of Danny Ainge to talk about Bill Walton. And, of course, Danny, we understand that you wear the hat of the Utah Jazz, but I think for the purposes of this conversation on a night where the Celtics are playing, folks understand we're going to talk a little bit about Boston and about Bill Walton. And when you hear the news and you think about the man, the first thing that comes to your mind about Bill Walton, Danny, is what?
I mean, he was just such a unique, complicated character. He, as a player, as a teammate, as a person, as a broadcaster, I mean, he was just his own guy. And I don't know anybody even close to like him. But he always made us smile, made us laugh. He treated everybody like royalty. He had the highest of compliments for everybody he came in contact with.
What's interesting, Danny, is that so many folks that are watching our show, I'm sure, that are in the younger demo, right? They didn't know the guy at UCLA or Portland or even Boston. So I just would ask, as a player, if you try to frame what he was, understanding how his body really betrayed him, but like even as busted up as he was by injury, what type of talent did Walton possess?
Well, I mean, he was one of the best big men of all time. Bill Walton, I grew up in Eugene, Oregon, and so I was a big Pac-8 guy at the time, and UCLA was our favorite team to watch and come into town, into Eugene. And so I idolized Kareem first, and then Walton came in after him, and I idolized him as a young player. And then I got a chance to meet him in 75 or 76, the summer at a Blazer basketball camp. And he always remembered that. Like in 1986, when he joined the Celtics, he had remembered that and remembered me as a player. But in 1977, I still think is one of the most incredible individual performances in NBA playoff history. What Walton did with that Portland Trailblazer team to win the championship, start out 0-2 and come back and win 4 straight games. He was so good. He's like a point center. He's calling out plays. He's not dribbling the ball up the court like Jokic is,
right,
but he's calling the plays as he's coming up. And he's, getting the ball in his hands, and he's making plays and making everybody around him better.
I heard some story, Danny, about Walton telling you that the only thing worse than guards are backup guards. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, we were scrimmaging one day, and we had some battles, and Bill was the leader of our second unit. And Jerry Seasting happened to be, subbing in that day with the starters, but he was our backup guard. And he got really, he always got frustrated at me because he couldn't run down the court and change directions. Like, so if you got in his way, he'd be all frustrated, like, get out of my way, get out of my way. And so Seasting got in the way. The only thing I hate worse than guards is blankety blank backup guards.
I can hear him saying it, right? I mean, there's a big giant picture, Danny, in our studio right now, this giant smile, and it's like every picture I feel like there's this smile, and I feel like that's reflective of who he is, but he's such a free spirit, and I'm just trying to imagine, there's a certain, and I think of the mystique of that team that you were a part of. I'm trying to figure out how does he fit in, because he's his own dude. Was that difficult for him to kind of, I don't want to say assimilate, but have it make sense?
No, Bill was so smart, and he understood what a team was all about. And his first phone call is to Robert Parrish, and he says, Robert, are you okay with me coming to this team? I'm coming to be your backup. I want to be part of something special. And Robert was, of course, welcomed him with open arms, and they were great, great friends as teammates. And then you had Bird and McHale and myself, who, like I said, we all idolized Bill as a college player and as a young NBA player. And so we were all excited. And it was great for me because I was the little brother, and I was the one who got picked on a lot on that group of guys. And when Walton showed up, all the attention went to him. And so I was freed up, and Walton got picked on a lot by the guys that looked up to him and the razzing, and Bill loved it. He loved being on that team. I remember when he showed up, Scott, one year, his first year, and we're playing pickup ball in the open gym, and we're getting ready for this season, and we are pumped up. Like, we've just lost to the Lakers in the NBA Finals in '85, and we feel like we're a better team, and we're adding Bill Walton to the team, and everybody is really jacked up. And Walton, in this pregame practice, he says, I'm sorry, guys, I'm going to be gone for the next 3 or 4 days. It was like, what do you mean you're going to be gone? Like, we're getting ready for the season. He says, I got to go to South Dakota for an Indian reservation sit-in. And we were just like, what? What are you talking about? He had to go protest some Indian reservation sit-in. And so we missed him for a few days. But, I mean, that's just who he was. He was just a character. He had a lot of beliefs, a lot of political views. He talked a lot about what a great chess player he was. He was so unique in every way.
Without question, and I'm just glad for our viewers that they get the perspective of who he was as a player. And in true Bill Walton fashion, we could go forever, Danny. He came on my show once and he started talking about bears, not the cow bears, but actual grizzly bears. And I just put my head in my hand. I just gave up because I was going to let him go until he was done. But it's obviously on a night like tonight, we got a lot to get to, and I want to just close with this. If you were to sort of sum up Bill, who he was to you as a person, and what you'll hang on to and remember for the remainder of your days, what would you say about that?
He was a great teammate, and he was a great friend. And he was a worthy idol for a young kid growing up on the West Coast. And I'll never forget him. I will miss him as I've been in my job in the executive positions, traveling around the country, doing games. I always loved going to watch him and Dave do their games, and would always say hi to Bill, and we'd talk for 5 or 10 minutes. And we've exchanged texts back and forth over the last couple of weeks when he hasn't been doing well. And he just, to the very end, he's just cares more about everybody else than he does himself. and yet he's one of the most charismatic people I've ever witnessed. But I used to stay up, Scott, on the East Coast for 10 o'clock Pac-12 games, not for the games being played, but to listen to Bill's broadcast, because knowing him so well, it just added so much to the flair that he had. And anyway, I'll always remember him.
Well, they say don't meet your idols. It's beautiful, Danny, to hear that sometimes you can meet them and they turn out to be even better than you might have dreamed. I'm so appreciative of your time and the perspective that you can lend to your teammate and friend, Bill Walton. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Bird.
By Walton on a cutting Larry Bird.
Final 35 seconds. Bale gets the handle. Short with the jump hook. Walton the rebound. Back up and in. And counting on that.
Throw it down, big man. Throw it down.
Get those offensive rebounds. Come back in. Back to a Green. Sent Walton with a great block. His 5th of the game. Seasting the pull-up. Got it. He and Byron Scott. And the water out on the West Coast. I don't like this cold weather back east. Walton down the lane. He's fouled on the way by McGee. Carlisle directs the traffic. Bird was looking for a cutter. Now they'll go into Walton on Whitehead. Bill spins and falls. First basket for Bill Walton in the night. Lowry pops out. In and out. Walton rebound.
Ooh.
Basket.
Oh, that was a clean pass. Ooh, that was a clean pass. Psst, buddy, man. Rewind, man.
He pops out. In and out. Walton rebound. Underneath the third kill. Basket will count and a foul. Golden State looking to trap a bit at half court. Which results in things like that. We've got the lead back again. Bird is back on the floor along with Dennis Johnson. Dennis is about to come in. Walt, nice move. Nice shot by Bill. He really leaned in. Walton, the give and go. I tell you, that has been the hallmark of this ball club. 40 to go in the game. Dale spins. Walton the rebound. Well, Wilkins turned Walton loose. That was a blast break. That was. Give and go to Kite. 6 for Bill Walton. Finds Larry on the wing. Walton's there for the offensive board, kicks it back out. DJ will try. Bird kept it alive to Walton for 2. What a play! Put that one in a scrapbook, mother. Walton looking for a cutter. Now goes himself.
Pivot foot.
Up it comes to White. Cage is ahead of him. He didn't see him. White takes it. Walton sends it back. Bird's got it. Just to catch up. Larry looking inside for Bill. Over the shoulder pass. Got it. Jerry Seasting is up and over at the scorer's table. Walton for 2. Cummings wants it. It's up short. McHale might have got a piece of that. Ewing's rebound is sent back at him by Walton. Come to anything. Walton got the steal from Sparrow. 2-on-1 Boston break. Bird. DJ the fall. What happened about 3 quarters down, and Ainge picks off the pass. Bullet pass to Walton. Bill in traffic. Got it.
The Challenge athletes, they have changed my life. They have made my life. They give me my life.
I've been very lucky. I've been part of 3 of the greatest teams in the history of basketball. This is the best team I've ever been on.
Bill Walton wasn't just part of the team here at the Challenge Athletes Foundation. Bill Walton was the captain of CAF, and his larger-than-life presence has been felt for years throughout this organization.
The reason Bill Walton was so impactful for CAF is he will tell you that he'd had 36 surgeries. So he was a challenged athlete. He could identify with our athletes. So when he sat down with a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old who's in a wheelchair or was missing a limb, he was able to identify with them, and they were able to look at him and go, this guy's a star, and he's taking time to spend time with me.
One of those most impacted by Walton and his passing was Mac Johnson.
For some reason, it seemed as if he was immortal, so it took me back when I got that news.
It took him back to 2017. A recent accident in South Carolina had left Mac paralyzed from the waist down. So Mac and his family were on a trip to California when they stopped in Dateland near Yuma for a milkshake and gas.
And in walks this giant.
The giant was Bill Walton. Mac introduced himself, shared his story, and the two started talking.
He said, we're gonna ride down the coast of California. And I'm like, this guy, he likes to elaborate. And I was like, there's no way. But he followed up on his promise, and so much more.
Walton actually invited Mac to move to California and live in his house. I mean, come on, who does that? Well, Bill Walton did.
Bill's awesome.
And from there, Walton set Mac up with the Challenge Athletes Foundation and all sorts of adaptive athletic gear. With Walton's help, Mac became a standout wheelchair basketball player, even playing in college. Mac says that before that gas station meeting, he was in a dark place, self-destructive behavior. But Walton helped save his life.
I had lost hope for myself. It meant a lot that someone like that could take the time to treat you as an individual and really just invest in you, and especially at a gas station. I don't invest in too many people that I meet at the gas station, but Bill did, and I think that was one of his biggest qualities, was that he made you feel like you were the most important person in the room, no matter where you were.
To this day, Walton remains a huge presence in Mac's life. One of his most prized possessions, this photo and message from Walton that still hangs in Mac's room.
A poster above my wall that says, nobody makes it to the top alone. And
that's real.
I look at that picture and it's above my bed when I was just alone, and it gave me a lot of encouragement. You know, I thought it was just going to be this cool story of I met him in a gas station, but
right,
it turned out to be so much more and changed everything about where I could have been.
Mac Johnson, one of so many, impacted so immensely by the kindness and compassion of Bill Walton. I'm Todd Strain, NBC7.
That is a beautiful story. You know, sometimes you'll see athletes, they'll meet up for a couple hours with, a particular individual, to support them, give them support, encourage them, whatever. But the fact that Bill Walton stayed in this young man's life, like legitimately, Bill became a part of his life. He became a part of Bill's life and stuck with him as a mentor and guiding figure and a motivator, a leader, a friend. Like you said, he's like, this is about to just be a cool story. Oh, I met Bill Walton at a gas station. No, you met a friend for life, bro. You met a friend for life, and your life will now never be the same. It's like that was supposed to happen. Bill Walton was supposed to come into this young man's life and change it. That's a beautiful story, man. That is a beautiful story. Couldn't have been a better person than Bill Walton to cross paths with that young man. That's a beautiful story. All right, so this next video is from the Bill Simmons podcast. So there's no video, it's just audio. It's about 22 minutes long. So while the audio is playing, I'm going to actually play video, so it gives you something to watch for those that are actually watching the screen, so you just don't have to stare at my face for 22 minutes. But this video is from a YouTube channel called ZGL, that's Zebra Golf Lima, and it's called Prime Bill Walton 1977 Playoff Highlights GOAT. All right, let's get it started.
3 years writing my basketball book, which got published in October of 2009. And for the epilogue, I wanted to drive down to San Diego and talk to Bill Walton, because a big part of the book was about the secret of basketball, how it wasn't about basketball, how it was about being selfless, being a good teammate, about understanding your place in the hierarchy of a team, about great players who could make other players better. Bill Walton embodied so much of it that I felt like I had to go see him. And there was this extra piece that of all the great players ever, he was the one guy who had that gift and wasn't really able to use it because he kept getting hurt. So I drove to San Diego, and I'm just going to read you the first two paragraphs of the epilogue. William Theodore Walton III lives in a sprawling house filled with hundreds of books, pictures, mementos, artifacts, and everything else that should definitely be in Bill Walton's house. Turn left and you might see a Vietnam book next to a Hunter S. Thompson book. Turn right and you might see a photo of Bill and Bob Dylan hanging next to a picture of Bill and John Wooden. A lifelong resident of the most beautiful city in America, Walton owns a Spanish-style home that makes you think, I am definitely undoubtedly in San Diego right now. The house features a basketball half-court and a pool, as well as his lovely wife, Lori, two pooches named Annie and Shasta, and a black cat named Charcoal. That's right, a black cat. This blows me away. Bill Walton seems like the last guy who should tempt fate with a black cat. Instead of being mentioned in the same breath with Russell and Wilt and Kareem, he's remembered for bad luck and what could have been. His body continues to pay for an injury-riddled career that ended 22 years ago. Only recently could he start moving around after major back surgery left him bedridden for months. His feet betrayed him so egregiously that within 10 minutes of sitting down with him, I glanced at his swollen, scarred, almost unrecognizable right foot, become distracted, and lose my train of thought. Walton was blessed with a gift and cursed with a body that couldn't handle that gift. The curse trumped the gift. One of the few players who understood the secret completely and totally, poor Walton never had an extended chance to harvest it. When I think back to that day, it's 15 years ago, almost to the month. I keep thinking about his foot because you looked at it and it was like watching it. It was like looking at a suitcase that had, stickers from where everybody went. And it just had all these scars that just kind of captured how awful his journey was, just trying to stay in the court. I think he had probably 40 foot surgeries and back surgeries, and his body just couldn't hold up. But he was at peace with it by the time I saw him play. And I have a lot more in that. I want to go backwards, though, because everyone talked about what an amazing human being he was and what an ambassador he was for basketball. But there's some basic basketball stuff I just wanted to rip through really quick about Walton, because I feel like he was that important. He's one of the greatest college basketball players ever by any calculation. That's the first thing. 3 Player of the Year awards, 2 titles. They had an 88-game winning streak at UCLA. In the 72 Final Four, 57 points, 41 rebounds in the 2 games. In 73 in the championship game against Memphis, best game ever, 21 for 22 field goal. Jesus. 44 points, 13 rebounds. And if you're going to talk about who are the greatest college basketball players of all time, Lou Alcindor, Bill Walton, Maravich, Oscar, like whatever list you want to make, Alcindor and Walton have to be the first 2 on it. And that's that. So he comes into the league. He's the first pick in the draft for Portland and can't really stay healthy there for a couple of years. And then all of a sudden it happens. March 1977 through February 78. The Blazers go 70-15, including the 1977 playoffs. And Walton's just crushing it in the playoffs. He's like 18-16 and 6 assists, 3+ blocks a game. He beats Artis Gilmore, David Thompson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Dr. J in the finals. And then this is the third thing in the finals. He has one of the 10 greatest closing games in the history of the finals. Pettit's Game 6 in 57, Russell's Game 7 in 62, Jordan's Game 6 in 98, Frazier's Game 7 in 70, Magic's Game 6 in 80, Bird's Game 6 in 86, Duncan's Game 6 in 03, LeBron's Game 7 in 16, Giannis's 50-pointer in 21, and then Bill Walton, 20 points, 23 rebounds, 8 assists, 7 blocks. They win the game in the final play. He rips off his jersey, celebrates shirtless with the delirious Portland fans. Maybe it's the greatest of all the closing games. I got to say, when you throw in the crowd coming in and just mobbing him, it's pretty great. Another thing with him, he's the greatest passing center ever until Jokic shows up. So if you're going to do Mount Passmore, it's Bill Russell, Sabonis, Jokic, and Bill Walton. If you're going to do most fun teammates of all time, I don't know how long you want your list to be, but Bird and Magic and Bill Walton and Jokic have to be probably the first 4 people mentioned. So there's that. The fifth thing, as he's doing all of this, he's one of the great off-the-court characters in the history of the league. He's got the long hair with the ponytail. He's got the beard. He's doing 70s protest stuff in a league that, for the most part, wanted no part of this stuff. He's not just protesting Vietnam. He's sticking up for black players. He's sticking up for civil rights. Like, he is a true 70s radical. There wasn't only no other NBA player like this in the 70s. There were barely any athletes like this in the 70s. Because, Ali, Brown, Kareem, all of those guys who in the 60s made such an impact. By the 70s, it's starting to fade a little bit, and Walton's keeping it going. He's also, pot smoker. He's a vegan. Rides his bike everywhere. Brent Musburger nicknames him the Mountain Man. He had this stuttering problem back then that somehow not only did he overcome, he became an eventual broadcaster, but he was just a presence. He's 7'2", like legitimately. I know he's listed at 6'11", but he was a legitimate 7'2", long crazy hair, played unlike anyone else in the league, was the only person who made Kareem seem smaller. So on top of that, he had this unabashed love for John Wooden and for good basketball. He had this crazy spiritual connection with the Grateful Dead, which lasted all the way through when he played, then afterwards. And I think he was still showing up for shows, even in the last year. In the 90s, he ends up doing broadcasting and becomes a character that way. This was the era where the color guy really was never that interesting in basketball. And then Walton comes in. He's like killing Karl Malone. He's killing coaches. He's doing stuff like almost from a fan's perspective, but he had, the gravitas to do it because he was Bill Walton. And he would have these fun podcast interviews and all these different things. You saw a lot of that in the 30 for 30, but he was a true off-the-court character on top of being such a great player. The sixth thing, he's the best guy in one of the 4 best teams I ever saw in person. So I saw them in December 77. They played in Boston. I just turned 8 years old. And for me to remember a random Celtics game from December 77 means that it had to have left an impact on me because the Celtics sucked that year. That was Havlicek's last year. They were not a playoff team. Portland shows up, kicks the crap out of us. They reach a level that I'd never seen in person before where we would miss, Walton get the rebound, everybody would take off. And that's just how it went. They felt unbeatable. We missed, they scored. We missed, they scored. They felt like watching a machine. We left the Garden. I remember my dad and I just like, oh my God, we would have never have a chance against that team. And as I got older, I thought the score was like 160 to 70. The score was actually 117 to 86. But I wrote this when I wrote my book, and I still feel this way. The 86 Celtics, the 96 Bulls, and that 77 Blazers are the 3 best teams I've ever seen in person. And since I wrote the book, I would add the 2017 Warriors. So it'd be those 4 teams. I never got to see the 2013 Heat during the streak because I was doing TV that year, but I wish I had seen them because I feel like they would have been in there. But those are my 4, 86 Celtics, 96 Bulls, 77 Blazers, 2017 Warriors, just for me seeing them in person. The 7th thing about Walton, his injuries and his loss of relevance from 1978 to 1985 was one of the most damaging things that ever happened in the NBA. Just, it's that simple. It starts with he gets hurt in February. They misdiagnose it. He has a stress fracture, which they don't really realize. He ends up coming back for the playoffs. They think he has a sore foot. They shoot his foot up. He makes it way worse. We end up in a malpractice situation where he sues the team. He misses the whole next season, ends up signing with the Clippers, and that's a disaster. He misses 3 full seasons from the moment that injury happens. He plays 47 games in 5 years at one point, 47 games total. For the Clippers, he played less than, I think, 175 games. And just gets removed from the league for 7 years, basically, because even when he was playing on the Clippers, and he had a couple years, he played like 55 games, 65 games. But even on the Clippers, like, it's not like anybody was watching them. They weren't a playoff team. So not only do we lose Walton, so think about like if we just lost Jokic 4 years ago, he's just gone. What's the league like? We lose a whole Blazers, Lakers, and Walton Kareem rivalry just never happens. We have in the 77 playoffs, he beats Kareem, and then it just never happens again. We lose Walton versus Moses. We lose Walton playing against the Bird Celtics. We lose Walton from a stretch of the NBA that was really dangerous. The 78 playoffs, 79 playoffs, that whole season, the cocaine era setting it in. The best players in the league are Dr. J and Kareem. They're not on TV that much. They really kind of need Walton. He's one of the most famous guys in the league, and his team is the most fun team to watch, and it's just gone. And right around then, they start tape delaying games. They're not showing games at all. They don't know which stars to push because they had David Thompson, they had Ice, they had Gervin. Like, they had good players, but for whatever reason, Walton, because of that 77 finals, it felt like he was becoming the face of the league, and then he's just gone. And they weren't really able to replace it until Bird and Magic showed up. Basketball dies in San Diego is another thing that happened. And then I wrote at the time, you can't overstate how damaging those lost Walton years were for anyone who truly cared about basketball. From a comedy standpoint, it would be like Eddie Murphy releasing 48 Hours and Trading Places, disappearing for the next 8 years, coming back, releasing Beverly Hills Cop, and then disappearing for good. That's what it was like. I mean, you're talking, we should have had 1,100 games from him plus 150 playoff games, and we end up with less than 500 regular season games and, less than 50 playoff games. So there's that. Number 8, he was the focal point of the best sports book of all time by David Halberstam. It's called Breaks of the Game. It is a 362-page snapshot of the NBA right as it's shifting from this downtrodden era it was having to a pretty lucrative era. It covers the 79-80 season, but it goes backwards. It's through Portland, through the prism of this team that really meant something, that had a chance to be truly great. And then within 2 years, Walton's gone. Injuries, money has ruined the team. People are getting traded. And it's about a loss of loyalty. It's about bigger business stakes. It's about the rise of the personal brand, smarter media coverage, trusting your doctors. It's just an amazing book and an amazing character study. I wrote about it for Page 2 20 years ago. I read that book so many times. I felt like the guys in the book were my friends, including Bill Walton. But one of my favorite parts of the book was Bobby Knight calls Stu Inman, the guy who built the team. And this was right after Walton bolted for San Diego. And Knight was so crushed because he loved the Blazers. He felt like Walton's Blazers teams were like exactly the kind of basketball he wanted in life. And he asked Stu Inman, is there any way to keep a perfect team together? Can it be done anymore? And that's been the crucial question of following basketball for the last 50 years, starting with the 77 Blazers. Can you build a perfect team? Can you keep the team together? The answer is probably no. I mean, even like we had the 2017 Warriors, which were about as perfect of an offensive team as you can ever build. And within 2 years, KD's leaving. We had Jordan and the Bulls, and Jordan, after 3 titles, goes to play baseball, comes back 3 more titles. That falls apart. Injuries, money, jealousy. It's just too freaking hard. And it really starts with that 77 Blazers team. The Knight thing, he becomes the most overqualified sixth man of all time. He goes to the Celtics. They trade Cedric Maxwell for him. I think they traded a pick too. Goes to the 1986 Celtics, Bird's Apex. They go 82-18. They go 15-1 at home. And miraculously, Bill Walton plays 80 games in 16 playoff games. He plays 96 games. This is a guy who did not play 500 regular season games in his career. His previous career high was 67. He played 19 minutes a game. He was 8-7-2 and brought just something to that team that I can't even describe. He clicked with Bird in a way that was almost like hard to believe as you were watching it. They were just immediately on the same Wi-Fi link, and they would start messing around with each other during games. And they had the same play over and over again where Bird would throw it to Walton, and then he would kind of run toward Walton, almost like using Walton as a pick, and either pretend to dart out for three, or he would just cut to the basket, and Walton would wait and just whip it over his head and find him. But watching those guys experiment together was about as happy as I've ever been as a basketball fan. The team had so much size. The team really loved each other and pulled for each other. There was no jealousy at all. And for Walton, this guy who it seemed like, was this huge what if in so many different ways. And then basketball makes him happy again. He fits in that team and plays for what seems to be the greatest team ever at the time. And he loved Larry Bird the most. There's this great moment. You can find it on YouTube. Game 4, Eastern Conference Finals, 86. They're playing in Milwaukee. And they're getting revenge against Milwaukee because Milwaukee swept them 3 years earlier. And Bird, ball gets swung around. It's literally the last couple seconds of the game. And Bird says, screw it, and just shoots a 3 at the buzzer. And it's an FU 3, exclamation point, goes in. And you see Walton on the court. He raises his arms. He's so pumped. Just can't believe Bird took the shot, made it. And CBS follows them into the locker room, and they're getting the celebration, and people are like, yeah, we did it. And then Walton comes in last. He's like, Larry Bird. It's just saying Larry Bird over and over and over again. He was so delighted by Bird. But he was such a big part of that team. And I can't think of another six-man quite like him that could come in, swing games where you weren't even sure maybe he should just be in crunch time in every game. He was that good. Yeah. And he would come in, huge body, always had the ball over his head. Fundamentally, he was so good. He would get these rebounds, just keep the ball over his head. Nobody does this anymore. Or if they do it, you notice it. He was always.
Yeah, let me just add to that real quick. Definitely, if you never heard Bill Walton talk about Larry Bird, go check out my Larry Bird playlist, man. And there's enough stuff with him and Bill Walton in there, and just, man, you'll be hard pressed to find somebody talk so glowingly about someone else. Like man, he loved him some Bird, man, and it's a joy. It's a joy to listen to him talk, especially. And what he was talking about right now, I say that all the time when I look at bigs today in the NBA. And Bill Walton's one of the people that did it. Kareem is one of the people that did it. Many bigs of the past used to do it. When you get the rebound, on the offensive rebound, keep the ball high. Go right back up with it. Don't bring the ball back down unless you absolutely have to. But keep the ball high. That's all I got to say. Bill was fundamentally sound. Incredible player.
He's ready to make a play at all times, which I think is a weird thing to praise somebody for, but there's so many guys now who get the ball. They're like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Walton always knew what he was going to do. I feel like his tape should be shown to high school centers for the rest of eternity. Last thing. I think Walton was one of 15 or 16 players who guaranteed you a title if he was healthy. And here's what I mean by that. Because when I was figuring out the pyramid for my book, the question for me, trying to do the rankings is, all due respect to David Robinson, but would you rather have 14 years of David Robinson or like 3 years of Bill Walton? Because if I have 3 years of Bill Walton and I could put the right team around him, a good rebounder next to him and a couple shooters and some quick guards, am I winning the title? Like I probably am. And if I want a great player, I want them because I want to win a title. It's not, I just don't want to be good for a decade and a half. I want to win the title. Not that many players guaranteed you a title. Like when I did this list in my book, it was Jordan, Bird, Magic, Russell, Hakeem, Kareem, Duncan, Shaq, Moses, Wilt, and Mikan in the 50s. And that was the whole list. Since then, Kobe, LeBron, Jokic, Curry, maybe Giannis. Depends how you feel about 2021 and all the stuff that happened this year. It was a pretty weird year. I'm not positive Giannis guarantees you a title, but he's couldn't be closer. And then Luka would be the last one, maybe that's on that list. But that's how good Walton was. That's why even though he didn't play that long, we were talking about him for years and decades after. And then, the really special piece was he brought as much joy and appreciation and wisdom to his post-playing career as I think any great player ever. So when I drove to San Diego to see him, and I'm thinking of the premise, the secret of basketball is that it's not about basketball, and I lay it out for him. I have the whole Isaiah story about how Isaiah realized what the secret was that I have in my book. I have a few other examples. I give him my case basically for the secret. And he listened to me, and this is what he said. It's not a secret as much as a choice. Look at the forces fighting against that choice. Look at the forces pushing you to make the other choice, the wrong choice. It's all about you. It's all about material acquisitions, physical gratification, stats, and highlights. Everywhere you go, you're bombarded with the opposite message of what really matters. And you wouldn't even know otherwise unless you played with the right player or right coach. The Woodens, the Arbacks, the Ramseys, the Russells, the Birds. How many people get that lucky? Kobe was blessed to have Phil and eventually realized that. With a truly great coach, it's not about a diagram. It's not about a play. It's not about a practice. It's the course of time over history. It's the impact a coach has on the lives around him. That's what Phil has done for Kobe. The history of life is that most people figure it out. Most of the time, it's too late. That's the real frustrating part, the squandered opportunities that you can't get back. Kobe figured it out. It took a while, but he figured it out. Whew. Now, he says all this. This was right after the 2009 finals. And one of the things I was grappling with my book was Kobe just won the finals. I wouldn't say Kobe is on the first sentence of people I would say was a big secret guy. He was a new generation of player where it was like he's going to get his and you had to fit everyone around him, but you could still win a title that way. And it took me a while to figure out the type of basketball that I cared about versus the type of basketball that Kobe was good at. I couldn't reconcile the two. I was like, whatever Kobe is doing on this Lakers team, it feels opposite to the stuff I'm basically touting in this book. So what does that mean for the book? And that was what I went to Walton with. And this is what Walton said back. Kobe only wants to win. It doesn't matter what your motivation is, or that your game or your style is different, or that it's not perceived to be right or acceptable. We have seen an entire spectrum of things from him this decade, and right now he's really, really good. Look, you want him to be perfect for you. This comes back to your choice, who your heroes are. You chose to value a certain type of player over anyone else. He has the right to make his choice too. So that's what Bill Walton said, and he was exactly right. Kobe was choosing to play a certain way, and it worked. Got to hand it to him. But that wasn't the best thing I took away from my time with Walton, because we were talking about not just the secret of basketball, but when it becomes truly special. When we talk about Larry Bird, and this is what he said. It all starts with the flow. Throw in the performance aspect, and that's when you really have something. Larry played with passion, persistence, and purpose. There was meaning to his performances. Same for Bob Dylan, Neil Young, Jerry Garcia, Jordan, Magic. It was important to them, which made it important to us. The personality of the lead player brings with it all kinds of responsibilities. Not just a job, it's a way of life. With Larry, people would buy tickets where they couldn't even see the game. Obstructed seats just to be there. People just wanted to be in the arena and feel that golden glow. He was incomparable. He could do things that nobody else could even think of doing, and he would do them in the biggest moments on the grandest stages. That's control of the flow. Flow plus meaning equals performance. So that's what Bill Walton said. I thought it was one of the coolest things I'd ever heard anybody say, at least to me. And I think he's right. Flow plus meaning equals performance. And the crazy thing about it was nobody understood that as a player more than Bill Walton. Because if you saw him at his peak in 77, there was flow and there was meaning and there was performance and there was a connection with his teammates that was unlike anything else that was happening. And it got taken away from him. And a lot of times that can break somebody. And it didn't break him. He was able to rise above it, and he led a great life and affected a lot of people. And to the end, he had flow and he had meaning and he had performance. So R.I.P. Bill Walton. He died this week at 71 years old. We're going to miss him. The sport of basketball is going to miss him.
Before we roll into the last video, I for those of you that don't know, and most of you do, that come here, that are subscribers and supporters, love y'all. If you didn't know, I'm a Kobe guy. Kobe's my favorite player of all time. So I did not expect to hear that last tidbit about Bean Bryant. May he rest in peace, too. So I never heard that before. Bill Walton speaking to Bill about Kobe. Because I've never been a big Bill Simmons guy. And I guess some of the reason is because me and him disagree on some Kobe things. Me and Bill Simmons. I don't remember exactly what, but I remember watching some of his stuff. And I was like, I don't quite agree. And he brings that up. And Bill Walton would say something that I say. It's like, when it comes to winning championships, there's a million ways to skin a cat. Just like coaching, there's a million ways to skin a cat. Just like leadership styles, there's a million ways to skin a cat. We've seen Larry Bird's leadership lead to championships. Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant's leadership lead to championships. Nikola Jokic's former leadership. There's so many different ways. There's not one way to do it. Right? There, like Bill Simmons, there are certain styles of play that I prefer than others. I'm not a big fan of people that monopolize the ball and hold it for, most of the shot clock. And I always said kudos to them that they're able to get all those stats and numbers and shoulder that responsibility. But as far as winning championships, I don't like that kind of style. That's me. And I'm glad Bill Walton told him that. Bill Walton said that so perfectly. And that's something I will always say about Kobe. Is that Kobe wanted to win on his terms. Like Bill Walton said, you got to understand, all Kobe cares about is winning at the end of the day. And he played within the triangle. Every year they won championships. Even some of the years they didn't win championships. But he played within the triangle. And him and Phil had an understanding, especially when they got back together after 2004. They had a deeper bond and understanding than they ever had in the past. Kobe had grown and matured. And Phil, to some degree, did as well. But they had an understanding, and they figured it out. So it would be Bill Walton to be the, what's the word I want to use? The voice of reason. The voice of reason and understanding. Because, for some people, it's hard for them to look at it any other way, right? They look at it their way. And heck, even I can be, I do consider myself somebody that always puts myself in the position of others when I'm, analyzing a situation or whatever, giving thought to something. I always do that. I always try to have empathy for people and sympathy for people. But even sometimes I can be a little bit, stuck in my own sometimes. And I think a lot of people, even people that are the voice of reason, sometimes they need a voice of reason as well. Even the mental health therapist sometimes has their own mental health therapist. Think about that. All right, we'll get into the next video here, which will be the last video by, like I said, NBA history and storytellers on CLNS. Again, great YouTube channel. Go check them out. As always, I put the link to the videos we're reacting to in the description of this one, so you can check it out there. And appreciate that channel for reaching out to me and sending me this video. So let's get into it.
This is a highlight of my life. I don't know what else to say. I got a bowl, I got a hat, I got a shirt and a proclamation here. There's nothing else to do with smile, smile, smile.
You heard what I said. Bill Walton was the unusual sixth man in NBA history because no team in the history of this league has ever brought a 7-footer off the bench to alter games in the manner that Bill Walton did. He's the greatest this backup, quote unquote, backup center the league has ever known in that season of 85-86, giving the Celtics the greatest 1-2 center punch in the history of the game. When he would come in the game, and if it happened to be against the backup center, he and Larry almost teased them. It was almost like they were playing a private game of their own. They ran the give and go better than has been run in this league ever.
Nice play. Give and go.
Give and go. I didn't say pick and roll. I said give and go. And you said, what's that? What's so tricky about a give and go? Well, after Bird passed the ball to Walton, he made his cut. No one knew what Bill Walton was going to do. The timing was altered. Sometimes he hit him right away. Sometimes he waited until he got at the right side of the basket. Sometimes he waited until Bird had crossed over to the left side and hooked one over his shoulder. He maybe sometimes bounced past. He maybe fake once and give it the other time. You didn't know what he was going to do. They couldn't stop that give and go. Greatest give and go the NBA's ever seen. And they were together a priceless pair. And Walton, surprisingly that year, played 80 out of 82 games. Made all the practices, all the two-a-days when they did two-a-days. The only time in his career he ever played anywhere near that much. And the only time he was injured, he broke a nose and he was sick once. And other than that, he managed to avoid injuries to his limbs, which was remarkable. It was a gift from the gods, and a gift for the Celtics, and a gift for Bill Walton, and a gift for the fans, and a gift for basketball everywhere to watch Bill Walton perform, particularly with Larry Bird. It didn't last. He got hurt the next year before the preseason even started, supposedly riding the exercise bike. Played 10 games that year and ended with a dismal performance in the 87 playoffs. Sadly, he went out. Bill Walton, though, identifies as a Boston Celtic. He won that championship in Portland, but you ask him what's the proudest, happiest year he ever spent, he will tell you it was 85-86 with the Boston Celtics.
27 years ago, the Celtics gave me a chance to be a part of something special. And it has changed my life immeasurably. But what I learned here was so much greater than anything that I possibly imagined.
He loved every aspect of being so he was the sixth man, unlike one we've ever seen. No, I'll repeat, no sixth man has ever altered the game in the manner that Bill Walton did.
Walton on the right side, off the glass, and Bill Walton makes it a 28-point lead. Comes to Seasting. To Walton for two.
It'd be cool, and it's Bill Walton. My wife Lynn said to him, "Yeah, Kevin's got your picture. I had a picture of you on his wall." And I'm like, "Oh, jeez." I'm like, "Yeah, I did. Okay." He was like one of my idols.
We all worshipped Walton. Walton was a legend to us. I had no idea what it was going to be like. I knew the basketball would be good. I didn't know how good. It seems like it was yesterday. And the joy and the happiness and the optimism and the hope that was brought back into my life. Not really by anything that I had done other than the choice to come back here.
I doubt that we'll ever see anything like that again.
Rest in peace to Big Red, no question. One of the greatest to ever do it. All-around game, one of the greatest big men. Honestly, especially from a passing perspective. Dude could really pass the basketball, man. Both ends of the floor, solid, man. Bill, man, amazing, an amazing life. An amazing person who has touched the lives of so many. May he rest in peace. So, I'm going to close this video out by posting on this video all the beautiful comments and thoughts people submitted on the post I put out last week, right after he passed. So, please stick around. I'm not going to be reading them out. They'll just be displayed on the screen and you can read them. So I appreciate everybody that shared their thoughts and their memories and their prayers with Bill Walton and his loved ones and with the world. All right. So again, thank you everybody for your submissions. Want to make sure your voice is heard on this video, and thank you Dutch T and CLNS for the support and the submissions. And thank you all for your support, man. You guys have been amazing. Shout out to the Bill Walton fans out there. Shout out to the Bird Gang. I know y'all here and representing. He was a big part of that Celtics history, winning that championship. So I know y'all here. And like they said, Bill would take being a role player on the Boston Celtics over being the guy on the Portland Trailblazers because of that community y'all had, that locker room y'all had, that team, that organization in the 80s, man. Bill would always speak lonely about Celtics Nation, man. So that's very telling. That's very telling. You know? So anyway, I appreciate you guys for stepping in, and please stick around and check out these beautiful comments about Bill Walton.